Welcome to my review of the LG front load washing machine model WM2140CW. This is a washer dryer set that I bought from Home Depot here in Canada. They had a good deal in a flyer in the last few weeks for the pair for $1,250. So after reading many reviews, buying a top load GE washer dryer set, which was awful, and I returned it, I settled for this and thought I'd give it a try. This is not the first front load washer I've ever used. I had a Frigidaire one about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. One of the early models of front load, and I had it was smaller capacity as well, but anyway, it died after 5 years. The main bearing went on it. After reading reviews about that, found out that at the time Frigidaire was using inferior material for the main bearing, so they were breaking easily and early, and the cost of the repair was the cost of a new machine. So this is actually my third machine in the last 10 years. After my first front load, I went with a GE top load, which was a very basic machine. After 4 years, the basic machine, which had a very complex transmission mechanism inside, broke. And when I opened the front panel of that top load machine, I saw a little computer motherboard on top of the motor. And I thought, so much for basic washing machines today. So after many reviews, I looked at this LG model and I decided to go for it. And after having it for a week and using it for several wash loads, there are a few things I discovered that I like, a few I don't, but I can live with. And I'm hopefully going to just cover a little bit of that for you, and hopefully this will be useful for you. If after seeing this review or viewing my video you'd like to post comments, I welcome any constructive feedback. And I'd like to hear your comments if you have a similar machine or the same. So model number WM2140 CW, and I'm going to try not to shake too much with the camera and hopefully point out a few things. So it's a 4.0 capacity washing machine, which is pretty big. My previous Frigidaire was not that, and I like that it's got a pretty big drum. I have been able to fit in some pretty big items like all the sheets of my bed, a queen-size bed, so fitted sheet, top sheet, the comforter cover, and 4 pillowcases fit in quite easily, where my top loader before struggled with it. Didn't struggle, but it was just too much. Neat little feature here, there's a magnet on the door. It pushes in, but as you close the door, it pops back out, and it's meant to keep the door slightly open. One of the designs that LG hopes will allow for air circulation so that the musty smell doesn't build up or occur. I think that's really it for the drum. It's stainless steel, it's warranted for the lifetime. The motor for 10 years, which I really don't think the motor will go. If anything, the main bearing and some of the rubber components might break. The soap and chemical dispenser is up here. I've used it I've used the machine several times, and it's dry now because I took a towel to dry it out, but there's always some water left behind in here. In fact, you can see some of the water. And this is normal apparently, and LG recommends that after your cycle you partially leave the drawer open so that it too can circulate air and hopefully dry and prevent the mold and mildew that so many reviewers complain about. So it's a little bit of a computerized front console, and hopefully I can show you the best angle. So there's a main power on switch right here. This is your main cycle control selector, a start and pause button. You have some features that go in tandem with the main cycle selectors, and then you have the various options, which I want to talk a little bit more detail about when I get to there. But you have wash rinse temperatures, the spin speed, soil level, the signal, sound, and various options including pre-wash, rinse and spin, quick cycle, stain cycle, and a tub clean cycle. So when you first power on the whole unit, it sings a little song, the computer powers up, and everything lights up on the main cycle selector, and you turn the dial to start selecting what you'd like. And as you do that, the display screen here starts changing with various things like timing, and it shows you a neat little symbol of where it is in the wash cycle and if it's spinning. And most of the cycles, as you select them, once you start the cycle, it goes through a sensing period of time where it's sensing the weight of the load and determining how much water and how much time it thinks it will need to wash. Right now I have it set for the normal or cotton mode, and I can choose to delay the wash start by up to, I believe, 9 hours. Oh, even longer. I thought it was 9, but it's 19 hours. You can add extra water, and in the manual this talks about you might use this if you have very bulky or heavy items and you would prefer to have a little extra water in the drum. What I noticed after putting the clothes in and starting the machine up after choosing my cycle, whatever it might be, it adds water and it starts turning and tumbling and sensing, but once it's finished adding water, it looks like there's no water in the machine. It's just tumbling clothes. And you can see some water, but it's not a conventional top load. If you feel that you would want more water, perhaps to activate more of the soap or get more soil out, that is what this option is for. And I've actually used it a few times and noted that there's definitely a little more water. Certainly not what a top load uses. The other thing is that there's extra rinse, and you can add up to 3 extra rinse cycles in the event you have a lot of soap or you used some bleach perhaps and you wanted to make sure all the residues are out. I've used the extra rinse. Just be warned that it adds extra time to the total cycle time. The other thing to note is that with making a choice here, you can only choose one at a time. Sorry, I correct myself. With the delay wash, you can choose one or the other of a water plus or extra rinse, but you can't do both extra rinse and water plus. So I will just get out of this and talk about the wash-rinse temperature. Not all cycles that you would select here allow you to choose everything. For example, the hand wash wool, it allows you to go to warm, cold, or warm. You cannot choose hot and you cannot choose tap cold, which sounds silly to me. I would like to have tap cold because my tap cold is really cold, and if I'm doing any wool products, I want cold water. I don't want the machine to say, oh, it's too cold, I'm going to add hot water to make it cool, because I don't want my woolens in any hot water or even warm or cool water. I want cold. Anyway, that's one little frustration. And another frustration, which I discovered, and it's very frustrating, it's got a hot/cold setting, and that's for the wash-rinse, a wash of hot water and a rinse of cold. Well, I've run quite a few cycles now using cotton normal, hot water, start the machine up, and the machine starts sensing, it turns a bit, it almost like stutters where it's turning the drum and it's trying to sense the load, and it sounds like it's squirting water in. Not sure if it's trying to draw the soap out of the drawer here, but it starts and stops with the water fill, and eventually it all fills up with the water, even with extra water or not. Once it's filled, it starts cycling and turning and doing its job. Well, I've stopped the machine, paused it, let the door unlock, and I opened it, and I put my hand in to test the temperature of the water, and it's, at the most, it's tepid warm, not hot. So, not sure, why, and thinking, well, maybe, it's a big steel drum, you got clothes in there, it's all cool or cold, the hot water coming in gets cooled off quickly. I stopped the machine, I drained all the water out, started the same cycle over, adding hot water, thinking, I'll warm the machine up, I'll get it hotter. The hottest I can get is barely warm. So that's just a bit of a negative feedback because it's not really a hot wash, it's more like a warm wash. So when I tried the warm is more like a cool, and the cold is just cold. So I'm disappointed. I wish I had the option of having very hot water come in. The hot water from our taps, we're in a condo, and trust me, it is hot. You would scald your hands if you put it under the tap in the sink. And I wish the machine would just let the tap hot water come in, fill the drum, and wash. Enough about the wash rinse. That's a bit of a rant, but otherwise it rinses as it, depending on how many rinse cycles. You have an option of spin speeds, extra high, and in the manual it says 1100 RPM, and you have a no spin if you just want to wash something, let it drain, like bathing suits or, I don't know, something very delicate, and let it hang. But I generally use the extra high because after the spin cycle, when I've taken my clothes out, they are spun out pretty dry. Better than I think my old top load. And it seems that the amount of time to dry in the matching dryer is a lot less. But that could also be because the dryer is more efficient than my old one. There's a soil level of normal, somewhere in between normal, heavy, heavy, light, and between light and normal. The manual says, and I've proven to myself by choosing it, if you have a time that pops up and you change the soil level, you see that the time for the whole cycle changes. And in this case, the hand wash only lets you go between light and normal. The soil level, it determines the length of your wash time. So normal is whatever it defaults to. And if you go heavy, if you could go heavy, it adds more time to wash. So the soil level is just more time to wash and hopefully get your soiled clothes clean. The signal button turns the sign, this little chime off, or to low or high, and it's kind of a pleasant sound. It's not an old buzz sound. When you first turn the machine on, it sings to you. When you pause the machine, it gives a little tune. And when the cycle is done, it displays end here, and it sings a little song, which is cute. Really not needed or necessary, but it's better than a buzz or some of the old doorbell kind of sounding machines. The last thing to talk about here are the options. And we have a pre-wash. And again, I've used the pre-wash, and I tried it with a cycle with cotton. And the hottest water I could get. And when I did a pre-wash, according to the manual, there is a compartment in the soap for your regular main wash, and this is your pre-wash. So I added soap here as well. And when it filled for the pre-wash, which, by the way, it will add even more time to your total cycle, I let the machine fill for the pre-wash. I paused it after it filled and started cycling or tumbling, and the water was pretty cold. And I thought, well, I guess that's how laundry is done. You pre-wash with cold water, but I still wish that it pre-washed in whatever my wash temperature was. So another bit of a design flaw, perhaps. You have a rinse and spin cycle, so if for any reason you just want to rinse something out, depending on, I guess, you can only do a cold rinse cycle. You can choose whatever spin speeds, and you can see that depending on some of the spin speed settings, the time of the cycle changes. The other cycle is a quick cycle, and the manual talks about this as being a very simple, fast and dirty, pardon the pun, cycle, and it's meant to freshen up clothes. There's a stain cycle, and the stain cycle is not really sure. I'd have to read the manual again, but it gives you a prolonged wash cycle. But you could probably still, yeah, I can choose a heavy soil. And it's again a cycle trying to get out stains, I guess. And the last cycle is a tub clean, which I've tried running it. I didn't complete it because it just fills with water, sloshes around after a period of time and drains. And it's meant to be used with either a special product like Tide Fresh or one of these tub cleaning chemicals, or bleach, or just the water from the tap. But in running the tub clean, I let the machine fill, it started, I paused it, put my hand in, and it's cold water again. So not sure how good it's cleaning residues and buildup of dirt and stuff inside the machine using cold water. So I wish it used the hot water, which you can't choose the temperature on the tub clean. I assumed it would use hot water, but it doesn't. If it does, it's mixed with cold water. And that's the issue, I think. When it's filling, you can put your hand on the pipes and you can feel that the cold is actually being drawn into when it's a hot water wash. One last thing to say about the machine, and that's the manual. The manual for this particular model actually states on page 22 that there is an internal heating element to boost the temperature of the water. And there's no other mention of it in the manual as far as how much power it consumes or anything like that. And so I contacted LG Canada, asked them, and they confirmed that in fact it does not have a water heater or a heating element inside at all. And they apologized for that confusion in the manual. And I take offense to that. It's not a confusion because I read exactly what it is. It's an error, and at this point they haven't made changes to it, certainly on the printed manual and certainly on their online manual. So it's very misleading. I know this is not an expensive high-end steam washer with all the bells and whistles, but for a basic machine, if you're going to have a misprint in your manual, you need to do something about it. And this machine's been out for over a year. And the other thing is, all other basic top-load machines, if you ask for hot water, it puts just hot water in. And these front loads seem to want to decide for you and mix it and do everything, according to what the computer thinks. And I would rather just to have the option of fill it with hot water. Anyway. Overall, it's a quiet machine. It does not vibrate, even on the highest spin. It does seem to get my clothes relatively clean. So far, so good, but I don't know for long term. I haven't put any like heavy stained clothes in. I've just done some bedding, some towels, jeans, some regular clothes that really weren't all that dirty. They come out smelling fresh. The machine so far isn't smelling, but it's still early days, and I will hopefully post a follow-up to make any further comments on this review. The dryer I will review separately. So thanks for listening, and I appreciate your feedback and comments.